This is video number 14 in a series of videos where we're making a tank battle game in Unity for Android mobile devices. In this video we're going to create some more enemy tanks and we're going to spawn those enemy tanks around the battlefield. For those of you watching these videos, you'll probably notice that I've done some more work on the terrain. Yes, what I've done is I've smoothed out some of these hills and also changed the color scheme to match my the camouflage on my tank here, so you can see it's a lot more difficult. The camouflage works much better now. Okay, and I have changed the color of the sky to lighter blue and added an additional directional light, which is a duplicate of the original light with a Y rotation of 120. Apart from that, everything else is the same. Let's have a look at this enemy tank before we start to make lots more of them. This enemy tank, when it's in range, will start to fire at the player tank, and when the enemy tank is destroyed by the player tank, okay, a number of things happen. The turret turns off, there'll be some particles, and the hull will stop moving. What I'm going to do is, to make additional tanks, I'm going to duplicate this tank twice and rename them tank 2, tank 3. Separate them. Now you may have your own enemy tanks, you may have many of those, in which case you don't need to do this, but I'm using this tank in duplication, and I'm going to make some more small changes to the speed of each of these and kind of make them perform slightly differently. Okay, so let's while we're here, get the correct camouflage on these. This is tank. Right, that was the wrong tank. Tank 2. Just changing the camouflage, giving each of these the correct camouflage. Tank 3 hull. Tank 3. 3. Good. So now you can see I have 3 enemy tanks, and now we're going to make prefabs of them. So drag tank 2 and tank 3 into your prefabs folder. You can have as many tanks as you want, and also as many spawn points as you want. Before we do anything else, let's just hit play and see if they still work. All 3 tanks are moving and the turret is rotating, and they're all able to fire shells at the player tank, so that's fine. Okay, so these are going to be our 3 enemy tanks, and we can now remove those from this hierarchy. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to create some spawn points. So create an empty, call it enemy spawn manager, and reset and make a prefab. Right click on this and create the first spawn point. So we'll call this a cube. I've used a cube. Spawn point 1. Remove the box collider from the cube and make it a bright color so as you can see it, and scale it up 10, 10, 10. Position it now where you want it. I decided to have one here. Duplicate 1.2. Again, position it where you want it. Decided to have here. Again, duplicate. Spawn point 3. Okay, so I've got 3 spawn points. Now I like to spawn tanks on flat ground. So I'm going to look at the terrain here, and I'm going to flatten around these spawn points. Okay. Now with this enemy spawn manager, apply these spawn points to the prefab. Just hit apply. And now what we need to do is make a script that will spawn a randomly chosen enemy tank at one of these randomly chosen spawn points. Okay, so we're going to spawn a random tank at a random spawn point. Okay. So in your scripts folder, create a new C script, and call it enemy spawn manager, and open the script. And here you have a script, and if you take a screenshot, I'll zoom in. Screenshot and screenshot. Okay, I'll go through this with you now. What this script does, this enemy spawn manager script, what it does is it allows us to set the maximum number of tanks that we want to have at any one time, active tanks in the battlefield. Right, so this is like your maximum tank number. Here we're going to have as 5, and this is a counter that we use to make sure that we have 5 when we set up the game in the first instance. Next here is an array of tank prefabs. We've got 3 tank prefabs, so we're going to drop them in there. And we've got, this is an array of spawn points. We've got 3 spawn points. We're going to drop them in there. And this is a public static instance, okay, which means that you can only have one of these in the scene. We only want one enemy spawn manager. At the start, this script will start a coroutine called co-setup enemy. And all this coroutine does is it will run 5 times. Okay, so it will say while the counter 0 is less than the maximum enemy, which is 5, then firstly add 1 to the counter and then run this function spawn tank, and then wait 5 seconds and then just go around again until this condition is no longer met. Okay. So this will set up the scene. This will set it up, and this will provide the first 5 enemy tanks. Okay. And this is the actual function, this spawn tank, that will actually choose a random enemy tank and a random position. Okay. So what it does here is we have an integer here. We're going to get a random number between this 0 and how many prefabs are in this array. Okay. in here. And also here it's going to get to another random number between 0 and how many spawn points are in here. And then it's going to instantiate or create a tank with this number in the array at this spawn point position given its number, okay, and at this rotation. So what all that means is this will choose a random tank at a random position and create this random tank at this random position at this rotation. Now, important to note here, this is public, and it's deliberately public because we're going to access this script from the enemy health script attached to the enemy tank. We're going to do that later, but to tell you now that how it will work is that when an enemy tank is destroyed, the enemy health script will send a message to this script to tell it to create a replacement tank, okay, to ensure that there's always 5 active tanks in the scene. Okay, good. So file save and attach that script to this enemy spawn manager here, and you'll see here we have max enemy 5. You can have as many as you want. Okay, tank prefabs, we've got 3 and we've got 3 spawn points. Let's drag those in. Okay, tanks are there, spawn points. You can have as many tanks as you want and as many spawn points as you want, and these numbers can be different. I'm just using 3 and 3. And you can apply those changes. When we when we run this now, we're expecting to see no more than 5 enemy tanks. So let's see if that works. Press play. We're going to count here, up here, how many enemy tanks are created. There's 1. We can see visually down here as well. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. 3 coming from this spawn point. 2 different colours. Okay, there's another one coming from here. Makes 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 enemy tanks now, and 1 has spawned from here. So we know all 3 of these spawn points are working, and we have all of the types of tanks. Now this is random, alright? So sometimes they might all spawn from here, sometimes they might all be the same color tanks or types of tank. It's random. So every time you look at this, you'll have a different scenario. But what we know is that the spawn points are working and the tanks are chosen randomly, and we have 5 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the script is not making any attempt to produce any more than 5. So that's working. Okay, the next thing we need to do is think about, well, what happens when we destroy one of those tanks, and we need to send that message across to the enemy spawn manager script to create a replacement tank. So go to your enemy tank prefab and look for this enemy health script and open that. You can do a screenshot of this and take a screenshot. For those of you new to these videos, we did a video about this enemy health script previously, so if you're not sure what's going on here, then please refer to that video. I'll zoom in a little bit. Okay, you can screenshot that and that. Okay. So what does this do? Well, this is the enemy health attached to every enemy tank, and this script is attached to every enemy tank. Okay, and what it does is it gives the tank an amount of health. In this case it's 2, which means that the enemy tank needs to take 2 hits to destroy it. Okay, and how does that work? Well, when the shell of the player tank hits the enemy tank, it'll look for this script, and what will happen is the health counter of this enemy tank will go down, and when it's less than or equal to 0, this tank's been destroyed. It'll run this function here. So as I said earlier, when the enemy tank is destroyed, it creates some particles. The turret is set active to false, which means you can't see it anymore, and it stops the tank from moving. Now we're just going to add one extra line of code to this, and this piece of code is going to say, okay, now this tank's been destroyed, now you need to make a replacement. So we have enemy spawn manager, which refers to our enemy spawn manager here. Instance, because you can see that we've made this an instance here. Okay. Spawn tank, run this function. This has to be public over here, otherwise you won't be able to find it over here. So all we've done is added one line of code to the bottom of this enemy health script attached to every enemy tank, and it says, right, this tank has been destroyed. Send a message to the enemy spawn manager to run this function and tell it to spawn a replacement tank. Spawn another tank, comes over here and it spawns another tank. Okay, so let's go file and save, see if that works. Oh, what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to make it a bit easier to destroy these tanks. Okay, so we're going to make that a 1 rather than a 2. Okay, so I only need to hit it once now. Just that we're going to be up against 5 enemy tanks. We don't know how difficult that's going to be yet. Wait for the script to update. And when it's updated, we'll press play and see what happens. We're monitoring a number of things. We want to see 5 enemy tanks, and then when we destroy one, we want to see a replacement. So I will wait first. I will see how this turns out. This may be too difficult. The range of these enemy tanks might be too much. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, we have 5 enemy tanks, but we've been taken out pretty much straight away. Okay, luckily we've landed up the right way. Okay, we haven't done the player health script yet, but I will try and take out one of these tanks. Oh no, stop. Let's make it a little bit easier. Okay, so go to the enemy tank prefabs here and look at the turret. Drag an enemy tank onto here. Have a look. The range here is too far. What's happening is as soon as they're spawned, they're just firing immediately at the player. Okay, it's not going to be the player doesn't really have a chance. So we're going to make it easier for the player. So let's reduce this range, and what we're going to do is reduce the size of this collider over here on the enemy turret. Yeah, it's that one. Currently it's 45. Let's have a look at 30. 30. Still probably, it's probably too much still. Just go 20. Start off with 20. Probably have more than that. But we're testing at the moment. We need to see if this actually works or not. We know that these enemy tanks can shoot. We just need to give the player more of a chance. Okay, let's just put it at 20, 25. So I apply that change there. Make that change to all of your enemy tanks. Again, you know, different tanks might have a longer range, shorter range. This is somewhere where you can tweak it. I'm just gonna bring this down to something that's useful while we're trying to test to see if this works. Okay, so I've reduced the range of each of those tanks. Yeah, that's it. I'm not immediately firing at us. It gives us a chance now to monitor what's going on. 3 tanks. So we'll just kind of stay out of the way until we get our 5 tanks to ensure that we get 5 tanks and no more than 5 tanks. Just kind of get ready to sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 5 tanks. Okay, now let's start having a go. So what we're trying to do here is test. I'm going to destroy this tank. Okay. So we've destroyed a tank and we should have now 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes. We have 5 active. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1 that's been destroyed. Test again. Yeah, we destroyed that one. Okay, so we've destroyed 2, so we should now have 5 plus 2 is 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Good. So let's stop there. Let's just pause this and have a look at this. So we have 7 in total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 2 of these should be inactive. Active. Inactive. Okay, so I've got 2 inactive and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 active. So that works. That works. Good. Okay. So that pretty much brings us to the end of this video. We now have a little tank battle going on here. What we're going to do in the next video is we're going to have a little bit more, spend some more time looking at these enemy tanks. There's a couple of things that these enemy tanks are doing that I'm not entirely happy with. One of them is that they have a tendency to drive over each other. So what I'm going to do is give them like a reverse gear, which means that when they crash into something, they kind of reverse and try and get themselves out of trouble. Alright, good. So there we go. There we go. Thanks for watching. Hope you learned something. And yeah, next video we're going to keep tweaking up these enemy tanks, okay? Thank you.